to the Be The Push podcast. My name is Jack Ferguson, and I'm going to be sharing with you stories of how business owners and entrepreneurs had to push through the hard times in their careers. We're going to be discussing the lessons learned from these experiences while arming you with actionable advice so you can be the push when you need it most. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to this episode of the podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Glen Richards. Now, you might know Glen for his work with Greencross here in Australia, and you might know him for his work as a shark on Shark Tank Australia. Obviously, Glen's a wealth of knowledge, and we talk about a whole range of topics in this episode. It is a long one, but it's a really good one. So we cover politics. Now, it's the first time I've ever brought up politics on the podcast, but Glen did consider getting into that game at one point in time, and we discuss why he didn't and what he thinks about career politicians and the current political climate we have. Then we get in some of the stories of Glen's hard times in business. Now, that included severe cash flow problems at one stage where he had to negotiate with the ATO to stay afloat, which is quite an intriguing story. And then after that, he talks about some internal conflict he had with a CFO at one point in time who didn't think he was the right man for the job. This is when Glen was CEO. And he talks about how he dealt with that internal conflict, how he got through that time. It's a great story. Of course, we talk about Shark Tank, and Glen just gives a range of advice for new entrepreneurs and also established business people. So it is a very awesome episode, in my opinion. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast as always. I hope you enjoy. All right, so today we're here with Dr. Glen Richards. Glen, thanks for being with us.
Pleasure, Jack. Good to be here.
So you're the founding managing director of Greencross, and you're a co-founder and director of Mammoth Pet Holdings, or otherwise known as Pet Barn, before it merged. I do want to go through all the things you are involved in at the moment because there's quite a bit here, and I want to get the full impact. So you're currently a non-executive director of Greencross, non-exec director of 1300 Smiles, non-exec director of Regionus, same with Smart Vet, an advisory board member of Montserrat Day Hospitals, executive director of My Foot Doctor, and director of Rhino Hide Proprietary Limited. And your last venture is on Shark Tank. So how do you have time for all that?
That's a good question, and unfortunately I've got another two important things coming down the pipeline.
Right.
One's in food technology, and the other is still in that allied health space. So, look, it's one of those things. I guess as a CEO of a public listed company, you work 60 hours a week, and I was trying to take a sabbatical last year, and Steve Baxter from Shark Tank sort of hijacked me onto putting my name forward for the vacant seat that John McGrath left. And I don't know. I guess. You just know your capacity for work. The thing I have to make sure is I have time to do my background before I turn up to those advisory boards and do my homework. And look, I'm used to working 60 hours a week, so my family are pretty relaxed. They see me a lot more these days. I do the school drop-offs occasionally. I do the school pickups occasionally. So they get me every weekend. So they're pretty relaxed that I'm actually more present in the family than I've ever been in my life.
All right, cool. So when I was doing research for this episode, I looked through what I could find, and it kind of appears that this wasn't really the plan from the beginning. If I'm reading between the lines correctly, 21-year-old Glen, it seems, wouldn't have maybe pictured this. Is that a fair statement?
Look, I think I'm usually very loud on the fact that when you see opportunities going past your front door, you know they are opportunities, and you know it's going to cause a little bit of indigestion, maybe a little bit of chest tightness, but you should jump on that opportunity and go with it. And I guess life's a little bit like that. Working in Townsville, decided it was time to come back and get serious about my professional career. I was working as a companion animal vet. I was doing about 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, and I had this fabulous lifestyle of job sharing with a Kiwi vet.
Okay.
And we shared a flat as well as shared the job.
Right.
And I would work 6 weeks. She'd go off for 6 weeks backpacking around Europe.
Oh, nice.
She'd come back. I would, we'd then swap over, and then during the summer months when they really needed more locum coverage, we'd both be there in the practice. So, the reality is, it just sort of evolves.
Yep.
So I rang a practice in Townsville just before coming back from London, and the young couple had decided to completely sell out because I was just inquiring about their branch practice, and next thing I'm buying their main hospital and their branch practice, and it's a bit like a Shark Tank pinch.
Right.
Within seven minutes, I'd done a handshake deal on the telephone, and I think that's a fair price. Listening to your numbers, don't tell anyone else, and I'll be back in Australia in 3 months. I mean so that's the sort of thing, and it reinforces. You create opportunity by making those telephone calls or making those contacts and taking the coffee and having the chat. That those opportunities come up because you're willing and open to change or attack life in some way. And so, to some degree, you're right. I had no idea where I was heading as a young vet. Did a research master's in cattle reproduction. Next thing, turned up thinking I was going to end up in production animals and be, the next guy doing great productivity work in the beef industry.
Mm-hmm.
Beef industry was very flat at the time, and in 1992. So I went to London to be a companion animal vet for a couple of years, and next thing I'm buying a practice in Townsville.
Yep.
Suddenly I've got 5 practices in Townsville and a pet store, and soon after that we're listing a group of vet practices on the Australian Stock Exchange. So, I mean, you sort of create the momentum, but you're absolutely open to the ideas of what may come past your door. You should jump on them. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the interesting ones I saw is talking about being open to ideas, but you were considering politics at one stage.
Yeah, look, I was always a little bit on the fringe in Townsville. I was, made some donations to particular political parties, and made, I was on the list that when the Prime Minister or a minister was in town, being Townsville, you'd get invited to the breakfast or the dinner or the lunch and get to meet the dignitaries. And I guess I did have not strong opinions, but opinions on things that were happening in Australia, and wanting to be a little bit part of the concept of community service. So many of my friends said, that politics will destroy you. You'll become a jaded, bitter and twisted person. So look, when the, I was flirting with the idea, and when the opportunity of putting together a bunch of veterinary hospitals and floating them on the Australian Stock Exchange sort of presented itself, I put it in front of my wife and said, darling, here's a couple of options for you. One, we move to Brisbane. We pull this group of vet hospitals together, and we go to the Australian public, and we raise some money, and we list on the Australian Stock Exchange. Mm-hmm. Plan B is we stay here, and over the next few years I pitch and see if I can be pre-selected for a position in politics in Townsville. Yep. By the morning, the bags were packed. We're going to Brisbane. So my wife is absolutely always been paranoid that I'll end up in politics. Right. Not because I'm a loud, power-hungry person, but I just I have a commentary on whatever's happening in society, and I think some of us have just got to step up. But I think. Mm-hmm. As I'm getting older, as well as getting uglier, I think I'm starting to become a little bit more realist. That it's with the party machines and the way politics works. I think you're probably never going to have the effect that you hope you have. So I've probably backed off a little bit more and willing to be a sounding board for politicians. We've set up our own foundation, my wife and I. Okay. So we're investing in people and social good, and probably doing things that way rather than going on the political route. Gotcha.
It was part of the temptation that, like, I was listening to you on the Osher Gunsberg podcast, and I noticed you mentioned your views on career politicians, and I'd be interested to hear what problem you have with that, because it's it's a view I share. I've got not a whole lot of time for it. I'd be really interested to know what you thought about. What that means for us.
Look, I think I get very nervous with the Liberal Party and the Labor Party and their machines that bring up young people into political positions way too early, and they don't have the life skills that someone in their 40s and 50s, while they've still got a bit of passion, should be taking those sort of pre-selection and heading to the polls. Yeah. We can get really political and go. People like Darren Hinch and Pauline Hanson have just made it into the Senate. Mm-hmm. I actually don't think it's a bad thing. There's a bunch of people that have voted for those people. They're on the fringe of mainstream politics, but gee, they've got a lot of life experience, and you hope with that life experience comes an ability to think, to weigh up ideas, to be willing to listen to other people's opinions, and not just follow a political party machine. And career politicians do annoy me because they've been groomed, they've been indoctrinated, perhaps, and they're willing to follow the party line all the way through. And the richness of the political landscape is, I think people should have their opinions, be willing to absolutely massage those opinions in the right place, and sway the way we make decisions. And I think the fact is that the more experienced you are, it's just having business experience or having organisational experience, big organisational experience is important. So in some way, look, it does irk me that career politicians are groomed and they end up in their safe seat and they follow the party machine, and next thing they turn up in the final cabinet shuffle, and you go, look, it just grates a little bit that good people who should be taking those sort of roles and being statesmen and deeply thinking about the issues, engaging in dialogue with their constituents and taking to Canberra or taking to Parliament, some life experience is really important.
Very interesting, because I like get a little bit disillusioned myself when I look at it, and I see them just tossing around the portfolios as well. Like it just, if you're an education minister and then, hang on, no, let's get you in defence, it seems like quite the leap to me.
Jack, you make an incredibly good point, because I tell you, how long does it take to get comfortable around your portfolio, and next thing you've been elevated or demoted? Look, and that's why you do need really good, public servants that run those portfolios for the minister and try and get them up to speed. But at the end of the day, I think it's crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. I think you hit your straps. What's the success book? 10,000 hours to become an expert. Yeah, what do they got? 5 hours, and they get lobbed education or Indigenous affairs. It just defies logic.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
But you look at someone like Tony Abbott, who I was reading about, where he spends a couple of weeks in an Aboriginal community. That's an authentic way to get experience and rub shoulders with the people you're trying to understand how to look after. So hopefully, when a minister gets a portfolio, he goes deep into that area and gets to understand it. Because I can tell you, when I brought a senior manager on into Greencross Limited, part of their 3-week induction was to spend at least 3 days in a veterinary hospital, being the receptionist, being the scrub nurse, working shoulder to shoulder with the vets and the nurses, so they understood what they were trying to manage. And then they had a little bit more empathy and a little bit more understanding of the work management and the workflows that go on. So I'm hoping in a portfolio, those ministers are somehow inducted so they just don't have a superficial view of it.
Yeah. I don't think it's a good look from the media doesn't portray it as they like. I mean, I'm very surprised to hear about that Tony Abbott example, because you don't hear about it that much.
No. Well, but someone like Tony Abbott, and I'm not a raving fan of Tony Abbott at all, but the reality is, I think the media, shop him a certain way, and to admit that he's actually a very sincere guy that's put some authentic time into understanding, the Indigenous portfolio when he had it, and he still does. He took, wasn't it last year? He took the whole 8 ministers up to East Arnhem Land and sat them in East Arnhem Land for a full week or two.
Okay, yeah,
it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I'd vote for you, Glenn, if you ever run.
Thanks, Jack.
No worries. All right, so I'd really love to talk about, you've done quite a few things over your career. Do you have any stories in mind where you had to really grind through a certain period or push through a really challenging period?
Yeah, look, it was, as I think the one that was the most painful is as an entrepreneur, you just roll your arm over and you have a go, and you do your budgets and you do your spreadsheets and you assemble 60 or 70% of the facts. You just get on with it. Yeah. So I'm a classic entrepreneur. So probably the year that caused us the most pain, I had a business partner, Wendy, and I said, Wendy, okay, we're going to open a little practice in the suburb of Woodlands in Townsville, and we're going to split our main hospital and open a brand new facility. And by the way, there's 1,000 square metres right beside that facility where we're going to put our new main hospital, we're going to open a pet store there. So we opened 2 vet hospitals and a pet store within 13 months.
Right.
Brand new, and still continue to carry all our sites in terms of our rents and whatever else went on. So we had deep operational cash flow bleed because we're opening new facilities.
Gotcha. Was it your first pet barn? Or?
It was actually called Pet HQ.
Okay.
And it was the really, we opened it, and I convinced some retailing mates from Sydney that the pet industry was a good one to get into, and that got their appetite whetted for the pet industry, and next thing we bought 6 pet stores in Sydney together.
Right.
But look, at the time, I still remember getting my spreadsheets out on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, trying to predict my cash flow. And I remember Wendy saying, how are we going for distributions and dividends, Glenn? And I said, look, Wendy, seriously, don't talk to me for 12 months about the financials. We'll get there. We'll come flying out the other side. But so we maxed out our credit cards. I didn't want to go back to the banks and admit we're in a little bit of a cash flow crisis.
Right.
So I did the smartest thing I could think of and stopped paying my BAS statements. And I thought the bank of the ATO was a good place to start. Continued to pay super, so did all that was important.
Yep.
But I remember, so we used to get points on our credit cards, so we'd pay our supply bill on the credit card and get Amex points or whatever.
Yeah.
So I could pay for a trip overseas for my family on points.
Yeah.
But I had no cash and no cash flow. So I'm sitting in LA airport on a family holiday and about to fly back to Australia in January, and this lady from the Australian Tax Office rang me, and I'm sitting there, overseas, on an overseas holiday.
Wow.
And she's rung me and said, look, we're just a little bit disturbed. You haven't paid your BAS for over 9 months. Mm-hmm. Is there a problem, with your account? Mm-hmm. I said, look, I'm just wondering, since we're talking about my account, I think it's time to close it. And there's this dead silence on the telephone, and I said, look, I'm just putting it out there. I'm in LA at the moment, and I'm just not sure you're giving me a big incentive to come back to Australia.
Right.
And there's more dead silence. I said, look, I'm just pulling your chain. I am flying back tonight. Yeah. Can we have a meeting with my accountant and yourself in 2 days' time and work out and explain what's going on. Yep. I explained exactly the cash flow crisis we were going through, how we were coming out the other side, and could we come to some arrangement around how we would pay the BAS. And look, to be fair to the ATO, they weren't wanting to wind me up or pull my noose. We employed over 65 people in the Townsville community. Yep. To be fair to them, they could see what was going on, supported me. I went through a repayment process with them over time. Yeah, it's the right call.
Gotcha.
Someone with a bit of practical approach rather than go, just close him up.
Yeah. Well, they're not going to get their money then, are they?
Correct.
So how that must have been so stressful. Like, was it?
Oh, look, it's not fun because you go back to those times when you're moving money between bank accounts, you're filling up one credit card, and it's damn painful. So I remember saying to my wife, look, we're okay. She'd see I was a little bit tense at night, but one of my rules is try and keep my personal life fantastic and separate from my business life. And she could see there's a bit of stress going on in my day job, and the best thing you can do is go for a long run and keep working through. And what the important one was mapping my cash and paying certain bills and getting a bit of relief from suppliers. So it was a year of fun of knowing we would get there, having this, and it wasn't blind optimism. It was carefully mapped cash flows, but at the same time trusting the fact that we were doing a good job in converting clients and bringing them on into the Greencross family, so to speak, in Townsville, and the pet store was kicking, and everything was happening. Yep. But we knew we were having to just handle 9 to 12 months of negative cash flow rolling through to positive cash flows. Yeah. And it's stressful, and you don't try and bring that into the family home, but every now and again, my wife could see the there's a bit of pale sort of colour to my cheeks. Yeah. And as I said, protected my business partner as well. I just said, Wendy, just don't talk about finances. And I said to my wife, it's just going to be tight. We still get the family holiday. We got points. We can go over there. It's okay.
Yeah, brilliant. I've got so many questions about that. Would you do anything differently in hindsight during that period?
Oh, look, I think you assemble 60% of the facts as an entrepreneur and roll your arm over. I probably should have assembled a few more, spent a little bit more time on mapping my cash flows and the timing of getting those businesses operational. I probably would have spread to about 18 months to 2 years rather than doing it in 13 months. So, I could have jumped on the site, not started the fit out so early, but, pay the base rent. But when you open a business, you got the rent, the fit out costs, your utility costs, and the full team, the wages that kill you until you get enough business coming in to justify the wages. Yeah. So I probably would have been a little bit smarter and mapped it out. I just thought we'd kick open and it'd go a little bit faster. Right. Okay. And so, to be fair, I'm a good entrepreneur. I'm not bad at spreadsheeting, but I probably could have been a little bit tighter and a little bit more, conservative in my budgeting when I did the work. So I look back and we could have done it a bit better.
I'm imagining it'd be so hard to predict really how well it was going to go, though.
Absolutely, and the other one is probably bringing the banks in the loop. So when we floated Greencross, one of my key things I did was a quarterly discussion with our bank managers to just make sure they knew exactly where we're tracking and travelling. Whereas back in those days, I was sort of kept the bank a little bit arm's length and just kept
in the dark.
Try and get money out of them. Yeah. So a little bit better on managing the cash flow and the timing of those businesses coming online, and maybe getting the banks a bit more involved, so that so I could have stayed compliant on a few other things there. Yeah.
So how often do you think so were you CEO at the time? Is that right?
Well, it was when I was just my private company in Townsville. Prior to, so it was about 2 years before we then moved out. So we had a co-op going, by the way, at the time. Okay. Yep. So the co-op was a group of practices here in Brisbane and myself in Townsville, and we had about 15 practices in a cooperative relationship, sharing a little bit of bookkeeping, sharing a bit of marketing, using my brand name Greencross in Brisbane, which I'd established in Townsville. So we'd moved in 2007 from a co-op to a corporate model where we teamed up with a group of practices, a couple of guys had optioned up from the Gold Coast, merged the whole thing together and then listed it on the Australian Stock Exchange and used that IPO to raise $11 million to settle the practices that had been optioned up. Okay. So, it was just me in the really stressful time. Yep. And then if you want to talk about persistence, when you slam 32 practices together overnight, you've had experience of running 5 practices with 60 staff, and next thing you wake up on the 15th of June and you now have 32 practices and 300 staff and a pretty hostile CFO who absolutely believes that I was far too inexperienced to be the CEO of a public listed company. Right. That's when you got to dig deep as well. So Craig and I spent a year in battle. Right. He was my experienced CFO that I'd brought on to mentor me around the public markets and how to manage the business and be a sounding board, experienced guy. Yep. What I got was a guy who probably quite rightly thought I was far too naive, far too inexperienced, and he was strongly advising the board to shoot me early before it all blew up. Yeah. When you look back, to some degree, he was right, but what he was missing was the fact that I did have a very strong vision for the veterinary industry. I had a very strong vision for Greencross Limited about where we needed to take the company. Very strong view on the resources we need to apply to the right things. I thought we were going to still be business 20 years down the track. Right. Yeah. I think he had a bit more of a short-term view of sort of getting in, rolling it up, and then getting out of the thing. So maybe there was a differing opinion there, but once I realised how toxic his view of my abilities, I just said, mate, it's probably not going to work out between us. So I backed myself and asked the board to back me, and Craig, jumped ship and said, yeah, that's fine. I can see we're not going to work well together. Right. And then we had to dig deep because we then hit the global financial crisis. Our share price had tanked, gone from $1 to $2 back to 50 cents. Right. My CFO was saying I was useless, and it was an interesting time, 2008.
So when he was talking to the board about you, did you know?
Not for quite some time. So,
Right.
he was ringing the chairman on a daily, weekly basis,
Wow.
and just explaining his strong views that I was, blindly optimistic and had no idea what I was doing. But, in our first year, we beat our prospectus guidance by 37%.
Right.
So I managed to get great performance out of our practices that had joined, and we had started a really serious approach to putting good platforms in place, good foundations in place to grow upon. So started to invest in the IT platform, education platform, management platform. So, the things that have to take place before you can really start serious acquisitive growth. So those organic things you have to do to have a business in place.
Right.
And so, look, to be fair, he had a strong view that I was pretty naive and pretty inexperienced and probably wasn't the right guy. I ended up having a pretty deep conversation with my chairman and just said, well, it's time to back me.
Yeah. What was that like when you found out that all that was going on?
Well, we had some pretty good arguments, Craig and I, through the first year.
Yeah.
I wasn't surprised. I was disappointed. But I realised that we couldn't work together. You've got to have a senior management team that absolutely is able to have authentic conversations to highlight each other's weaknesses and strengths and form a team so you're synergistic. And Craig and I were not balancing each other well.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
And I'd still call him a mate.
Yep.
After he left, we patched up the relationship, and I still have a high degree of respect for his abilities. He's a very diligent, hard-working, good analytic CFO.
Yep.
But we didn't gel.
Gotcha.
And part of forming teams is you've got to gel. You don't have to be. You don't want yes men. You want people that are going to challenge the thought process in the company, but not hijack it and not be hysterical about it.
Right.
And so what happened after that is I put a very inexperienced financial controller up as the CFO. We're in the middle of a GFC. Everyone had sold off Greencross anyway because it was an illiquid microcap. And I said to Wes, mate, you're the man standing.
Yep.
Do you want the gig?
Yeah.
He was 31.
Right.
Became a public company CFO, which was a huge, huge ask.
Yeah.
But no one was watching. So we had
Gotcha.
a good opportunity through 2008, 2009 to reform or to really form a tight senior management team. So brought on a good GM of ops, brought on a good marketing person, brought on an education director, and formed what I thought was a great senior management team, all fairly inexperienced but very passionate with a really let's have a go, can-do attitude.
Gotcha. Yep.
And because there's two ways you go. You go and put on the very experienced executive with deep experience and on a very high salary. We were at the other end going, we're in the middle of a GFC. I can't really afford the big salaries. Let's put on the really passionate, have a go, can-do attitude type person. They've got some experience, but their salaries are still at the lower end of the scale.
Right.
And then build a team. And that's the way I took it. I explained that to my board. They backed me. And from 2009 to the year I resigned from the company, we added something like 20 to 25 veterinary hospitals year on year. We grew revenue at north of 25% year on year, and we grew earnings north of 25% year on year for nearly 6 years straight.
Wow.
If you'd invested in 2009, you would have had over a 1,500% total shareholder return. So, I've
done it right.
I retired from the company feeling I had done a lot to put some very good foundations in place. And the journey would continue post the merger and getting our integrated pet care company going.
Gotcha. I would be interested, you did talk about how at times when your CFO was criticising you that some of it was possibly fair. Like what did you feel was some skills you still had to learn at that stage?
Oh, look, he was quite right. I had no MBA. I'd done a lot of reading, but really, I'd run 5 veterinary clinics in Townsville with 60 employees.
Okay.
It's interesting. I brought him on to be a mentor for me. It was probably the wrong call at the time. As I said, our personalities didn't gel for the job we had to do.
Yep.
Was I inexperienced? Absolutely. I was hoping for a mentoring sort of coaching support. We didn't quite get that.
Yeah.
So I was aware of some of my weaknesses when I recruited him.
Gotcha.
But I think he was a little bit more hysterical around some of my weaknesses, and,
Okay.
and I was a little bit more optimistic around some of my weaknesses. So there was just a differing of opinion, and I still argue I was the right guy for the job. Absolutely, totally understood the industry. And was willing to bring people on into the team. But the epiphany I had was soon after Craig left that I didn't have to know everything. I didn't have to be a gun, person that could analyse P&Ls. I didn't have to be the expert marketer. All I had to do was deeply understand where we were going and how we were going to get there, and bring on really good people and hold them accountable for the role that I was bringing them on to do. And what it worked out was they were much smarter and better at me in the roles they were coming on.
Gotcha.
As a CEO, I went, I don't have to know everything. I just have to have good people and hold them accountable and support them, and then get this really great dynamic with 9 people around the senior management team. Get this great dynamic that we form this collective wisdom think tank that could nut through ideas or spot an opportunity, and as a team come up with a strategy and then put someone in charge to project manage it. So they were the sort of skills I learnt. But the epiphany was knowing I didn't have to know everything. I could give up being the control freak and just delegate. And it was almost an overnight change. And it did take me really probably 18 months to get to that point.
You have to trust other human beings then, though.
Absolutely. and a lot of founders struggle with that. They can't let go. And to be fair, maybe that was some of the concerns Craig had. I was across everything, deep in everything. But it's having wise counsel and from other members of my senior management team. I steadily evolved into a pretty good delegator and a pretty good CEO.
Okay, so you sound like you're a huge fan of mentoring for maybe an entrepreneur or a developing business person. Would that be fair to say as well?
Absolutely. Look, mentors are so important, and look, I had some good peer mentors, people that I'd ring up, pick up the phone, and chat on a daily or weekly basis about the same challenges they were having. So Paul in Pet Barn was great to bounce off. My mate Daryl in 1300 Smiles, we'd have a good chat. Andrew Geddes, my chairman, we'd bounce around things. So, having that mentoring or peer mentoring, people going through a similar experience and you all going through a very big learning curve. And I remember Daryl from 1300 Smiles in my end of my first year. We're having a chat, and he said, "Mate, how are you going? Are you enjoying it?" I said, "Not at all, mate. Not at all." And he said, "Yeah, I'm not enjoying it too much either." So, you build up your capability and your experience, and build out your senior management team and the organisation, and life gets better.
Gotcha.
Or you simply get shot by your board because you're not performing. And I still remember the board saying to me, "Okay, if you don't deliver," because I tabled my 5-year business plan. So Wes and I, the new CFO, and I, back in 2009, worked on our business plan, and to the end of 2008, and tabled it to the board and said, "Here's our 5-year map. This is where we're going. This is our financial roadmap. This is what we're going to do, and we've got an operational roadmap that complements this one." And one of the board members looked across the table and said, "If you don't deliver the first year, you're gone."
Right. Okay.
And I went, "Yeah, that's fair call. That's a fair call." And one of the other board members sort of chimed at the time, "Well, mate, performance equals freedom." I said, "Thank you. I better perform." So you do start to grow up your capability as you get. But it was interesting. I was at an investment community discussion the other day, and one of the people at the table said, "There's no good CEOs in Brisbane." I said, "That's crazy stuff." I said, I can tell you that I would not fit the profile to be putting me in charge of a public listed company back in 2007. Yet, a year into the job, and then for 6 years after, if you go and have a look at the performance of ASX companies, we made the top 9 best performing in the last 5 years. So during my period of tenure as the CEO of Greencross Limited. So I can hold my hand up and said, good team engagement. We'd moved our engagement scores for our team, about 1,500 employees, to a culture of success. We were growing 25% top line and bottom line. Our total shareholder returns were some of the best performance in the Australian Stock Exchange. So, I'm not saying I was a hero CEO at all, but I'm telling you, I had a fantastic team, and I was incredibly lucky and humble that I could assemble them and hold them accountable and be a mentor for them as well, so that they could support the teams around Greencross, and it was just a fantastic few years.
Yeah, and I think every way you've described mentorship there is not the perception most people have. They think you have to have someone really high up, looking over you from somewhere else, that you call on the phone once a month or meet once a month. But you're describing that peer mentorship. It doesn't have to be someone who's even above you, necessarily. Yeah,
very flexible relationship. Just people that are willing to ask you the questions and have some good engaging dialogue. But I remember, brought on the GM of Ops, Terry King, so he's now with G8 as the GM of Ops there. But end of the second month, he wandered into my office with a problem and wondered how I would handle it, because he was head of operations for our clinics. And he came in, laid the problem on the table. I went bang, 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 rescued him, gave him the answer, said, "Go on, Terry, away you go." And I'm still trying to do my own work.
Yep.
Open door policy.
Yep.
And he went out, and about 2 minutes later, he's straight back and he said, "Glenn, look, when I come in with a problem, it's not because I want you to solve it. It's because I want you to be there as a sounding board, and we shoot the breeze and help me come up with a solution."
Right.
I said, "Got it."
Yeah.
So you don't want me to rescue you? No. Yeah. I don't want you to rescue me. I want to learn, and through the dialogue and the interaction, the conversations, you help me open my eyes, not just give me the answer. And from that point forward, you need that sort. And I got better at with all my other team members then the same way.
Yeah.
So they'd come in and the old managing up situation, lob a problem at you, and as the CEO, you're the hero. And being a vet, you're here to help.
Yep.
I'm used to solving people's problems, so I'd solve them and out you go. But you don't let people grow.
Yeah, got it.
And Terry gave me a very strong message there: was help people grow. Don't teach someone to fish rather than just catch the fish for them.
And give it to them. Yeah.
So it was good lesson. So I had my own team willing to have authentic conversations with me about my performance, and I was willing to listen and not get defensive about it. What I think that the last few years was the more people not criticised me, but raised issues, the less defensive I got. I don't have to take it personally. Yeah, we're all having an opportunity to grow. Yeah, and so that's part of mentoring, I think.
Yeah, and you would have. I'm assuming you would have wanted them to bring up those.
Absolutely,
be comfortable too. How did you create an environment where people were comfortable to do that?
That safety where you're open to a proper conversation.
Okay.
And probably the most important thing we did in establishing that. It's deep trust and respect, that you value someone else's opinion, and they're not having a go at you to destroy you. They're having a go at you to help, or putting something out there to help you.
Yep.
And I think the defining point in Greencross around developing that trust and respect and rapport was most of the senior management team came for a little walk with me across Kokoda in Papua New Guinea.
Oh, right.
It's 3 hours up, 3 hours down, 3 hours up, 3 hours down for 100 kilometres and over 7 days.
Yeah.
And I think as a senior management team, there was a really deep, healthy respect that we'd gone through a pretty arduous sort of time together. Yeah. And by the time we got back to Brisbane and was, it's around about the same time we really started to grow and expand Greencross. We had this trust and respect that we could lay issues on the table. Yeah. And at the same time, we did get onto the Vern Harnish, the Rockefeller habits. So we were doing our daily huddles. We're doing our strategic operational review meetings, our Storm, weekly. Okay. Reviewing how we're going on all the things with our numbers through to our projects. Yeah. We're having our monthly management meeting, which included all our middle managers, and we're having our quarterly or 90-day resets. Confirming what our employees were worried about, confirming what our customers were worried about, and putting those critical issues up there. Those having that authentic conversation with a senior management team, and they're all different, very diverse people around the table, meant we had a pretty authentic think tank that could bash ideas through.
Yeah.
I could call someone a dickhead to their face
Yeah.
in the room, and they would never take it personally. They'd call me a dickhead back. That's when you trust each other.
Yeah.
That's not personal. It's to get
Yeah.
the best solution, seize the opportunity, or work out how to get around that obstacle. There was always going to be an answer.
Okay. And I'm assuming you need the people working with you who have the genuine interests of the company at heart as well, right? Because then, would that be inaccurate?
Absolutely, on a number of levels. One, I think the people that came on into my team were seriously genuine about being a support structure for the local veterinary hospital.
Okay, yeah.
And so therefore they had a fairly humble position that they're there to optimise the local vet hospital through improving all aspects of the local veterinary hospital, from the benchmarking, coaching, through to the engagement of the team and the HR support. So we had that humble respect for the job they were doing. At the same time, they also were incentivised. We developed loan share schemes for the senior management team, that if the company performed, they would do pretty well down the track.
Got it.
So there was a double whammy. I think they just had a deep view that they were going to do a damn good job. I was telling someone the other day, I'd get to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and the car park would be half full, and I'd leave to go home at about 6:30 at night. Car park's still just starting to empty out then. So I had this phenomenal work ethic in my team and the people in support office, and that extended to the support they wanted to give to our frontline clinics.
Okay. Fantastic. I noticed you mentioned investing before as well. How did you get into investing?
Okay, look, so it's funny. My accountant always said I was had a certain amount of money, always on the fly, going into stuff.
Right.
But moving from Greencross in 2014, I made the decision to move from an executive role to a non-executive role. I had been the managing director. When we merged with Pet Barn, we agreed that I would just handle the veterinary portfolio, and someone else would be the CEO, which I thought was fantastic. I'd done the job for 8 years, and I'd had enough.
Just on that point for a second, so what does it actually look like to go from an executive director to a non-exec?
So basically, an exec director, you're working day to day in the business, and you're up to your eyeballs in the day-to-day operations of everything going on in the company. As a non-exec, you get to meet once a month, have a really strategic conversation about the direction of where the company's going, have a pretty good, robust discussion with other directors and the managing director and the CEO of the company and the CFO, understand the performance and basically make sure on behalf of shareholders the company's going in the right direction.
Right.
Versus you're the guy who actually's got to execute as well.
Yeah, okay.
So, look, much more fun place to be as a non-exec.
Okay, yeah.
To some degree. Look,
yeah.
I love the exec role. So, move to a non-exec was I needed to. I was not burnt out, but I was tired after 8 years straight, and I decided when I exited the day-to-day that I needed to take a certain amount of money off the table.
Yep.
I had all my wealth embedded in, or a lot of my wealth embedded in Greencross shares. So I sold 60% of my shareholding, created a nice fund that I could then move forward with investing in businesses. And so I had a sabbatical in 2015, took the year off.
Yep.
As I said earlier, got hijacked onto Shark Tank by Steve Baxter.
We noticed that, yeah.
But, it's been because from an exec position or having run a business, you know how you can help and support.
Yeah.
At the same time, you don't have to be the guy in the front line, delivering the business plan. You're there helping shape the business plan.
Got it, yeah.
And it's strategically a very, very nice place to be, being able to invest and help mentor and support, other people on the journey of creating a business.
What about, just on that point for a second before we get a bit more into the investing, what about giving up the control?
Look, it was quite well engineered. We had so I'd been a board member and an investor in Pet Barn from day one. Understood and knew the guys really well in Pet Barn, and Paul and I used to ski together every year anyway. So we had this running conversation about the smartness around merging a professional services business and a retailing business. And once we started realising there was a lot of commonality around the pet owner and the services and products we could offer, we started debating the opportunity of an integrated pet care company, and that evolved into the concept of convincing both boards that the idea of a merger would be a good one. In those negotiations, I agreed to continue on as the CEO of the veterinary division. Paul, who'd been the CEO of Pet Barn, would continue as the CEO of the retail division, and we'd put a head CEO over the whole thing.
Get it.
So they're people I'd worked with for a long time, I wasn't stressed about it.
Right.
I just knew I had to continue to deliver performance in the veterinary division. That was my job.
Oh, cool. So then you get into investing. Have you enjoyed that?
I have. Certainly, it's a different one. As an entrepreneur, I've had to learn to slow down a fraction, get a little bit more diligent around analysing business deeply and understanding the fundamentals of the businesses I've been investing in. So I've sort of drifted more into health and allied health space.
Okay.
It's a little bit similar to my veterinary hospitals, and I understand retail quite well from my many years of involvement with Pet Barn. But I still feel a lot more comfortable in the support and development of professional services. So that's been where my deep commitments are.
Yep.
And then more the startup space and my Shark Tank investments. What I bring is some naivety around the industries they operate, but some smartness around the mentoring and asking the big question or the naive question that puts that founder or that CEO on notice about what's going on. So you still add value, even if it's not your backyard.
Get it. Okay, so I'd be interested to know then, since you've started investing, what's the things about upcoming entrepreneurs you're really liking to see, and what are you not so happy that you're seeing too much of?
Yeah, look, I find startup space can be incredibly challenging if you don't quite understand the personality you're dealing with. And that's the hard one. When you're trying to work out, yes, they've got a good product or service that is going to be relevant to the marketplace, and do we have the best person there to try and deliver that business plan, be it a development of a software app or a software platform through to a new food technology device. So part of it is working out, do you want to back that person, and can they deliver, and have they got the skills and capability? And part of your job as an investor, if you're going to do some mentoring, is to help them. And the other part is the assessment of how likely is it that those 5-year financial forecasts are actually going to come through, and trying to deeply understand it. So it can be a little bit tough. Biotech, fintech, it's a little bit like exploratory mining companies.
Right.
You're just not quite sure who's going to make it through. Are they going to find the gold? That's why you can burn a lot of cash wondering. So I tend to want to have a deep understanding in how far is the company away from really monetising and becoming more of a commercial entity.
Right. And how well do you think Australia's doing as a society to encourage send the right message to potential entrepreneurs or budding business owners?
Yeah, it's a good question. I run hot and cold on it a bit. Look, I think we're getting better. I think the federal government has certainly put in place and are in the process of putting in place some really good regulations around tax deductions for early stage innovative startup companies. Bankruptcy laws are changing to it's okay to take a directorship in a company that goes bust. Well, not quite okay, but so there's some help on the federal government related to support and regulations. I think we've got to get much better at the interaction between the academic community and the business community. The town versus gown mentality.
Right.
If you can't do it, you teach. But there's got to be some mutual respect that the guys in academic world bringing some deep thinking and research, which is complemented by companies and business people that can see a way to go to market and commercialise quite quickly or have access to the marketplace. So I think we're getting better. The startup community has gone amazingly well in this town, and every street corner you've got a startup sort of happening, which is fabulous. Now we just got to get a little bit better at taking from the entrepreneurial seizure to something that's resembling a little bit more likely to be a commercial success.
And what do you mean by the seizure?
So I suddenly have a great idea.
Yeah.
I assemble the app to write the writers, or assemble I start doing the stuff.
Yeah.
And then went, holy shit, we're in business. And so that seizure, maybe really thoughtful planning on where you're going, and everyone races out and gets funding, and if it blows up, it doesn't matter. It was someone else's money.
Yeah.
I think, that sounds harsh, but there is a degree of and I know it myself. I was a 26-year-old once. You blow it up, you just go and start again. Yeah. So there's got to be some I think more responsibility around taking on people's money.
Okay.
Knowing that the likelihood of success, and being really honest about the likelihood of success.
Okay.
Rather than just a little seizure, let's map out the plan a little bit more diligently, and then convince your investors that you are the person, and you are developing the skills and bringing the team together, be it through shared resources or not, that are going to evolve that business.
Okay, very interesting. So
it's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, back as a 26-year-old, if I blew my first vet practice up, I still was a vet and I could go and do it again. So it's not a cavalier attitude.
Yeah.
That I'm, it's good to be optimistic, and it's good to have a go, and that's what we want to foster. We want to have this entrepreneurial culture that takes innovation and commercialises. That's entrepreneurship. Assemble the funding, assemble the team, start putting processes in place, and move it up the towards that commercial success. And I think some of the mentoring that's got to go on is around that. Let's ask some big questions, put some time into that business plan, reset that. If you're a fast-growing little company, you've got to reset the business plan every 30 days, not every 90 days. I was growing at 25% a year. Yeah. But if you're growing faster than that, you've got to put a day aside every month to reset the strategy. Yeah. To make sure you're checking in with the traction, what are your customers saying, what are your other people in the team saying. So some of that stuff is just vital.
Yeah. Do you think we're seeing too many people have that entrepreneurial seizure as well? Like we were talking about the experience before, without that, without any business experience at times as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the tough one. It's what is good. You get some of these serial entrepreneurs having a go, but we want them to fail small, so it's not a big loss. Yeah. Until they get and assemble enough experience, and then they go forward with some good contacts, and it works. Yeah. So I don't want to quell the have a go attitude. It's fabulous. We've got to have people that are thinking laterally. They're thinking about big problems in the industries that they're involved with. They're thinking about what unique position they're going to present to the marketplace or present to the customer. Yeah. And then work out how to here we're going to be in 5 years, and then work that all the way back to how we're going to execute the business plan, and put a really detailed financial and operational roadmap in place, and then follow it. But every month you're reviewing it, or every 30 days, every 60 days, every 90 days, depending on how fast you're growing.
That is a little bit different to some of the advice you see kicking around in the startup community, is the whole fail fast and just, hack away until you sort of figure it out. I'd say there's quite a lot of us who don't put that long-term thinking into what we're doing.
Well, and this is where you've got to slow down a fraction. Yeah. This is a fast-paced world. Yeah. Slow down a fraction and start thinking 20 years ahead. I was listening to a lady last night saying we've got to think 1,000 years ahead. You're putting a legacy in place. You're putting stuff in place, what they call it the cathedral thinking she was talking about. Yeah. And it's a good one, because you go, let's just fail and have another go. Let's fail, have another go. And you're building up some good experience. But why not slow down a fraction? There's globally people are playing in your space. So you're trying to understand why they won, why they didn't, why they won, why they didn't. Connecting, deep connections, having a bloody conversation. Slowing down a fraction. Yeah. So many people race down the track, smack into a wall, dust themselves off. Isn't it? And that's pull back a fraction. These ideas you're having. So I was doing that to Greencross for a while. I'd have these entrepreneurial seizures, in the shower at home, come to work with this grand new idea and smack it in. And what I worked out is I had to assemble a list of my great ideas and my unique things that I was going to bring to the organisation, and I couldn't table them except for every 90 days.
Right. Yeah.
So for these startup guys, that maybe they should do that to themselves too. Here's the whiteboard and all these crazy ideas they got, keep filling them up.
Yep.
And then once a month, bring 3 or 4 other crazy guys in the room with them and say, let's just smash these around and see which one we'd want to massage into something that's starting to look like a business plan, because that still needs conscientious effort to pull up and start trying to understand the marketplace, how many customers you're going to get, how we're going to get to them, all those basic things that mean you're more likely to succeed than fail, and then work out who's been really successful, make a phone call to them. I'm just looking at playing in this space. Can you shoot the breeze with me? Yeah. And I get that now. I get that a lot as a person who's been successful in consolidation and developing a network of businesses across Australia. I'm having coffee at least 3 times a week. Okay. Chatting around what worked, what didn't work. The mistakes I made, what I would have changed. Here's my advice. Yep. And it's the same in the startup community. I mean, it's got to be a network of people sharing their experiences, positive and negative, so the next guy doesn't bump into the same issue. The rookie mistake, you make it because you're bloody naive and you're racing too fast. And having someone who can give you a little mentoring advice, it's pretty handy.
Got to be open to hearing it too, though, don't you?
Absolutely open to hearing it. And I can tell you, I was bulletproof once. Yeah. I think I was about 19, and then I worked out after a while I wasn't so bulletproof, and you start realising people like, the older members of the business community and your parents even, they know stuff. Yeah. So it's okay to be a little bit humble and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And some of them want to smash you down. I've been there. I remember right at the start of the Greencross consolidation, talking to an old veterinary colleague, and he said, mate, roll-ups fail. The veterinary industry is the worst place, the last place you'd ever think about trying to develop a network or roll up or consolidate. I said, why is that? He said, no, it's small business, They think small. Yeah. They're vets. They're dingoes. Dingoes hunt on their own. They don't want to form packs like wolves. He's given it to me. Quelling my passion, and I went, okay, thank you. And I went off and I thought long and hard about why. What was the purpose I was trying to achieve? It was to develop a collaborative network of veterinary hospitals across Australia. That was my purpose, to get collaboration, trust, sharing of great ideas across a network. Rather than acting in isolation. And maybe the startup community, I think the startup community does a fabulous job of collaboration. Having shared working space is a fantastic thing. But is there breakout sessions, and is there room, or does everyone just beaver away at their desk and have a bit of a coffee occasionally, or do you wander into the meeting room and go, let's just smash out some few ideas on this one? I don't know how you guys work.
Sometimes like that. Yeah.
Right.
I like the talking about being open to that, receiving the message from a mentor or someone who knows a little bit better than you. Because it brings back memories of when, my first business, if you can call it a business, was so appalling that I cringe thinking about it. But it's probably the best thing that happened to me, because with a business, I feel like you can't ignore facts, forever anyway, because if the money's just not there,
you're burnt.
Yeah,
you're gone. You're underwater.
Yeah, but in other parts of your life, you can trick yourself. So if someone, I don't know, hasn't done anything in business and they're 35 and they jump in, I think that's a little bit of a shame in a way. Yeah.
Look, I think there's you got to remember Ray Kroc, McDonald's story. Yeah. I think they're bringing a movie out on it, but I did read the Behind the Golden Arches, and he was 56, I think, when he. Yeah, somewhere way, it might have been even in his 60s when he noticed the McDonald brothers had this fast food outlet that actually it was fast food. Yeah, and next thing started the process of the McDonald's. Look, I don't think there's an age limit on it. Seriously, Jack, I think that's a bit unfair. I think it's about an attitude of being humble. It's been respectful of other people having an experience and being able to share their opinions on things and being willing to be receptive. Right. So whether you're 18 or you're 98, open to people having an opinion, and you sit there and listen. You don't have to take it, but if you listen, somewhere it plays in your headspace, and it may help you avoid some rookie mistakes. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. I suppose I'm just thinking, for someone like me, I needed that kick in the
can
you
go-
know where early on.
Well, if you have an arrogance
Yeah.
that you're always just going to succeed,
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah.
It's great that you have that positive. It's ambitious, it's entrepreneurial, it's optimistic, but I think in all that you still got to stay humble, and otherwise you miss what the customer's telling you, you miss what your employees are telling you, you miss what your mentors are telling you. You've got to be humble and willing to listen,
Right.
and maybe a good smack over the head by going bankrupt or losing a business helps you get better at being humble. Perhaps that's what it is. But look, I think people have got to roll their arm over and have a go. Just put some effort into the planning. Put some effort into developing a team around you. Put some effort into finding some mentors that know that can add some good advice, be it from the same industry or other industries. Just be open.
Right. And so you've done quite well over your career, and I ask this question every episode, and I think it's time to ask it now. Any challenges with self-doubt still?
Look, I think most entrepreneurs, we're highly competitive, but we have that, I think that self-awareness and the ability to challenge our thinking. And so there's always some degree of self-doubt that you have to shake yourself off and keep going back onto the cricket pitch or the rugby field and have a go. Otherwise you become pretty arrogant and you may as well be dead. I think the self-doubt is about putting yourself out on the edge to force yourself into uncomfortable positions.
Right.
And I think you do that your whole life. I was talking to my wife last night about it. She said, you people are all the same. I was at a speaking gig with a couple of other entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You people are all the same. You've got to be slightly on the edge and you've got to be doing stuff. You can't put your feet up and watch TV. And there's an element of that. And somewhere in that is that self-doubt. I'm not sure. It's trying to prove something to yourself.
Okay.
Is it a chip on your shoulder? I don't know if it's even that. I just think you have a self-awareness that you're capable and you will achieve, but you've got to have some self-doubt to ask some questions because it then de-risks as you go forward.
Yeah, I see.
Rather than, shit, I can't do it, which is then a really negative thing, versus what are the things that are going to trip me up that I should be aware of? And that's the self-doubting voice that entrepreneurs have versus the negative people have the self-doubting voice that just takes their legs off.
Right.
Whereas for an entrepreneur, we probably have a voice in there that de-risks or has you aware or cognitive of the things that might destabilise or cause you deep pain.
Right. So interesting. And I suppose that that willingness to have a go is why you would have had a crack at Shark Tank, I'm presuming.
That's exactly why I got stuck on it. I can tell you what happened. So Steve and I are out to dinner with our wives. So Steve says, John McGrath's just pulled the pin, he's floating his company, and the chair is vacant and all the sharks are putting names up and Channel 10's putting names up. Can I put your name up?
Yeah.
And I said, Steve, I'm having a sabbatical. Absolutely not. I'm very relaxed right at this moment. Yeah. And 2 bottles of wine later, he asked again, and my wife's going, of course, put his name up. He put his name up, and Emily's going, put his name up, Steve's wife. And I said, look, and Steve said, look, you can always say no. Yeah. So did the screen test in Sydney, and sure enough, Saturday they rung through and said, we want you to be the new Shark. And I said, look, seriously, I'm not sure. I want 24 hours to think about this. I'm just not overly happy about coming out from underneath the radar. I'm very happy that I run a pretty quiet life. Yeah. We're sitting at the dinner table Sunday night, so I actually got them through till Monday morning, but sitting at the dinner table Sunday night with my kids, and I said, look, none of you have ever watched Shark Tank, but it's a show about and explain what they did. What, you're going to be on TV? I said, no, I don't think I want to do it. Yeah. And Jessie, my eldest, just said, Dad, and Soph's in there and Hannah's in there, Dad, you always tell us to have a go.
Right. Yeah.
You got to have a go. Right? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm feeling uncomfortable about it, I'm stepping back, and you're right. I've got to step into it and look at it as a new challenge, something I've never done.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of fun. I had an absolute lot of fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's why I did it. But the other part of doing it was this concept of sharing stories. I think that's what Shark Tank does well, that it's given some profile to entrepreneurs and the startup community and the scale-up community that business is important. Entrepreneurs are vital to society. They add serious value through research, innovation, building business, creating employment, changing the way we live.
Yep.
And I think to some small measure, Shark Tank is an extension of creating an awareness in the community that it is okay to be a business person, an entrepreneur, the have a go community. It's okay. And it's the probably our biggest audience, without a doubt, is the school kids,
right?
13-year-olds through to about the 18-year-olds. They are our core watchers of Shark Tank, and they can tell you more about the show and what's on the show than I can.
Right. Okay.
A mess of kids that friends with my daughters always are. Now, what did you invest in? Why didn't Steve do that?
Yeah.
What was Naomi going on about?
Okay,
they're watching it seriously.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So how's life changed for you since jumping on?
Look, I probably I was enjoying my sabbatical, as I said.
And
I've come off the back of Shark Tank, and it's got busier and busier this year. So that's
gotcha.
It's nearly a year since we filmed. I'm about to go back in and film again.
Yep.
Look, I probably crystallised where I enjoy playing. It's in the scale-up space. Businesses moving up fast.
Yep.
Expanding fast or growing fast. And it's in health and allied health I really enjoy, with a bit of an interest, because of my coming from Western Queensland, a bit of an interest in food technology, food security, and businesses that play in that space. So I've been making investments in really health, allied health, and food technology.
Right. Any recognition in the supermarket when you're just trying to buy some fruit?
Not yet.
Okay.
Oh, as a shark?
Yeah.
Oh, in my local community, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was in the bank the other day, and the teller started pitching me a business plan.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I went, she's recognised me.
Yeah.
Look, not a lot, but enough.
Okay.
And obviously, our friends and family all know about it and take the piss out of me.
Right.
That's fun. It's there as it's fun.
And,
and as I said, the most important thing we do is educate Australia, or help educate Australia in the importance of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. No, I think it's doing a great job of it. I love the show. So
excellent.
It's I really appreciate you jumping on the podcast with this, Glenn. That was a fascinating conversation. Thanks for
Jack.
being with us.
I appreciate all the questions and discussions. Thanks, Jack.
Cool. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Be The Push podcast. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. I appreciate your company and look forward to talking to you again soon.